All right, start in 1 minute. Just a reminder before we start, folks, to please mute your phones, turn on your videos, and we are about to start in T-minus 1 minute. And when you have a question, you can raise your hand in the reactions, and we will get to you. All right? So please, please, please mute your phones unless you're asking a question. Thank you very much. And before I actually say anything along those lines, good morning to you. Glad to have you here. Tell a friend to join us right now for Flip, Floss, and Fly. Let's start it, my brother.
All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome again. Welcome back to week 2 of Flip, Floss, and Fly. For those joining us for the first time, thanks for participating, and I hope you all enjoy the session today. Today we're going to be talking about debt management, right? Before I go into the presentation, I have another point. From last week, I promised you guys that I'll have a hit every week. Here's the point for this week. It's called coconut, the cream of the crop. Them say opportunity come through hard work, but enough ghetto youth asleep in a dirt. If you're not the cream of the crop, then you can't make it to the top. All society care about is uptown and downtown, but a bare innocent little youth in the ghetto are drowned. Me I call the one a coconut, because only the milk I will get a chance at the till. When coconut go through strainer, it's a no-brainer, because only the milk I will bring the silk. Well, if in the strainer trash, so society just give the youth them one big dash. Coconut, enough youth poor, yet society lock the door. How me ever make it if me no possess the cream of the crop? Work hard them say, and you will make it. But as you get the pay, the government take it. Coconut, cream of the crop. Alright, so I just wrote that one last week and I wanted to share that with you guys. So for those who weren't here last week, so again, my name is Andre Smith. I'm the host. I'm from Jamaica. Big up my Jamaican peeps, big up my Grenadian peeps, big up everyone from the Caribbean and Canada. I am a graduate from York University, did my undergraduate degree in accounting. I'm also the founder of Flip and Floss. So Flip and Floss is a financial literacy and leadership program, and Flip stands for Future Financial Literacy and Investment Program, and Floss is for future leaders obtaining sufficient skills. Again, this program came about because of my personal experience struggling financially when I just moved to Canada. I was about $50,000 in debt and I was living paycheck to paycheck. It was hard, it was rough, and survival was key. I needed a way to escape that, and I did. And then I found a way to help other people, which is why Flip and Floss is here today, to help you and others and myself to make better financial choices. Earlier this year, I received the 2020 CBC Community Champion Award for my work around financial literacy in the community. It was an intense competition. There were over 100 participants. The judges had to narrow it down to 10 nominees, and then we had to have a public vote to select the top 5 people. I was among those the top 5 because of my work in the community, helping to uplift individuals and families. And so I am super excited about financial literacy, and I hope you are too by the end of this 12-week session. So welcome back again. Like I said, we are here for Flip, Floss, and Fly. So sit back, grab a drink, relax, participate, engage, do whatever makes you happy, but make sure you learn something at the end. All right, so we're just going to do a quick review from the previous session. So in the last session, we talked about credit and understanding the concept of credit. So like I said, credit in Canada, North America, in most countries, it's important to have a credit history because that will help you to access financial products and services. It's not like in Jamaica or some part of the Caribbean where the shop owner say, you know, Mr. Credit dead and you can't get anything on credit, right? No, it's different in North America. You actually need credit history to be able to access credit products. We also talked about the importance of a credit score, like I just mentioned earlier, to access credit, right? To get a job. Some jobs actually require you to have a certain credit score. For example, if you're working in the bank, if you're getting a rental property, the landlord might ask for your credit score. So it's extremely important that you maintain a healthy credit score. 660 and higher is considered healthy, right? We also discussed some of the factors that affect your credit score, such as late payment, accessing too much credit, too many entries to your account, among other things. And this week, I actually have a trivia question for you guys. And so the first person to raise their hand, right? The first person to raise their hand and answer this question will be getting a $25 gift card. So the question is, from our previous session, can you tell me which of the factors we discussed have the most significant impact on your credit score? All right, so I see Nathan raised his hand.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So you said in the last meeting we had, the factors that impact our credit score is payment history, amount you owe, type of credit, and age of credit.
And which one is the most significant?
Payment history.
Can you be more specific? Like what type of payment history?
Like the credit transactions you've had in the past, like your credit history.
Close.
Right?
You want to give it another shot?
Not sure.
You're warm. Let's see if you're warm. We'll get to the specific answer. I'm looking for something very specific. But payment history does have the biggest impact. I just need a little bit piece more.
Who else raised hands?
Anyone else want to take, like, which specific aspect of the payment history? All right, so what's the name of the first person that answered us now?
Nathan.
Yeah, okay, Nathan. So that's actually correct. So it's a payment history, but I needed it to be a bit more specific. So like I was looking for late payment can have a significant impact on your credit score. But you're correct in saying payment history does affect a credit score. So we have a winner this weekend. Shout out to Nathan, the winner of the $25 gift card for answering that question. So now we're going to go on to the discussion. Like I said, this week we're going to be talking about debt management, right? So it's one thing to get in debt. We all get in debt, especially when we see that cheap vacation to Hawaii. Yep.
So if we could just get Nathan to share with yourself on the chat his information on how we can get in contact with him, either his phone number or whatnot in the private chat, so that we'll be able to get that to you. Or you can just send your info to president@bdpa.org and we will get that to you. Okay?
What I'll do, Roderick, is I'll communicate with Nathan and get his information, okay?
Perfect.
Sounds great. All right, Nathan, you have yourself a prize there. All right, so like I said, we're going to talk about debt management. So we all are very experienced with the other side, how to get in debt. So now we're going to focus on how to get out and stay out, right? You know, there's this Jamaican song where say, when Mr. Debt come knocking at the door, right? You can't run, you can't hide. The debt is going to follow you. And so this is what this picture is depicting here. So once you wrap up that debt, there's nowhere to go. It's going to keep coming and it's going to keep coming and it's going to grow and it's going to chase you down. But how do we stop that? Well, I'm here to help you and to help you to make some good decisions that will keep you out of debt, right? And lower your interest, your cost of borrowing, right? So what is debt management? So this definition I actually came up with on my own, and I define debt management as the ability to manage your obligations in a prudent manner without taking on significant risk, right? So there are some key things here. So obligation. An obligation is something that you're required to pay because you've signed an agreement or you've made some kind of contractual obligation to pay someone to borrow or to use their service, right? And prudent means being careful, right? So being careful not to take on more than you can manage, and being careful to ensure that you are meeting those terms and conditions that were established when you made that agreement, right? And financial risk. What are some of the financial risks? We're talking about significant interest rate. We're talking about inability to repay. We're talking about impact on your credit score. So those are some of the financial risks. And like I said, I came up with this definition because of my own experience dealing with debt and how it has affected my life, right? So what is debt? So one of the most important things is that we need to classify debt. In the previous lecture, I mentioned that we need debt because a lot of us weren't born rich, right? So we need to take out some kind of debt to be able to help us to move forward. So there is this unique and well-known classification. So there's the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? And I don't know, who knows which debt is the ugly debt? Can somebody give me an example of an ugly debt? Which debt do you think is ugly? All right, so I see a few people participating there. Do you have any examples of ugly debt?
Yeah, we got a couple here, Andre. We got payday loans, higher than your income, payday loans again, credit card debt, debt to buy clothes. So we got some really good examples here.
Some good examples. All right, awesome. Love the discussion. So I'm going to show you the classification, right? So good debt is any debt that will ultimately increase the value of your assets or your net worth, right? So what is an example of a debt that will increase the value of your assets? One example here is a mortgage to purchase a house. So in the beginning, when you take out a mortgage, it's a debt. But once that debt is repaid, it will become, the house will become an asset. So it increases your worth. So this is an example of a good debt. And this is a debt that I'd recommend that you take on once you're able to do so, right? In future presentation, we're going to talk about things such as cash flow, to be able to manage those debts and to plan for those debts. I love to forecast, to look into the future, right? And so this is what all this session is about, to help you to make those important decisions, right? Another type of good debt is home equity line of credit, aka HELOC. Anyone here ever heard of HELOC before? Anyone familiar with HELOC?
No, I can't say no.
Yep, I see some participation there. Great. So HELOC is where, you know, like if you have a mortgage, for example, and there's equity built up in the house. So equity is where there is like an excess, or let's say you bought the house for $400,000 and you paid $100,000 into the house. That $100,000 would be equity. It's the portion of the house that you now own, right? Or the portion of the mortgage. So that's considered equity in a nutshell. What's HELOC? HELOC is where you're able to borrow against that equity. So if you have $100,000 in the house, you could take out a loan at a low interest rate. This is considered a secured loan, and you can use that to either buy a second property, or you can use that to renovate a property, etc. So this type of loan is considered a good one because it comes at a lower rate, and it's usually, in many cases, used for investment purposes. But if you use that HELOC to go on a trip to Hawaii or to Mexico, then, you know, it's not a good use of the loan, right? Student loan. You know, this question came up in our previous session. Is it good to take a student loan? And I said, yes. Any investment in yourself is always good. And when I say investment in yourself, because a lot of people mistake this, investment in yourself don't mean going into a brand name store and buying $3,000 worth of clothes. No, investment in yourself means personal development. So taking courses, going to college, going to university, whatever it is that you're doing to invest in your personal development, that's an investment that is expected to produce some kind of return. Are you following me? I want to raise your hand now. If everyone is following me, raise your hand. Raise your hand, because this is a good discussion. We're now talking about how to classify debt, which is important. Yeah? All right, good. I see some hands going up there. So now, what is the bad debt? You know, bad debt, on the other hand, does not increase the value of your asset, right? In many cases, it actually decreases the value of that asset, right? So what are some examples of those bad debt that we talk about, and why are they bad? All right? Who can give me an example of a bad debt here?
So we had a couple people talk about bad debts. We heard credit card debt, debt to buy clothes, payday loans,
Yeah,
debt that's higher than your income. What else?
100%.
Bankruptcy.
Oh, that's very bad. That is very bad indeed. All right, so love the discussion. Those are all good examples. Really good
Giving
examples.
money to your boyfriend.
Ah, I know Jamaicans have a saying for that, but I won't mention it on the air. It's too bad.
Okay.
All right. So good, you're right. So credit card. The interest on credit card is actually pretty high. And there are two interest rates on a credit card actually. So there's one for purchases, which for me in my credit card statement is about 19%. But then there's cash advance, which is about 22, almost 23%. Some credit cards have about 24%, 28%. I know in Jamaica they have like a ridiculous rate of about 50 or 60%. So it is absurd. And what you will find is that a lot of purchases are actually considered as cash advances. So for example, if you use your credit card to go on certain platforms to pay a bill, that might be considered as a cash advance. So be careful whenever you're using your credit card to make a purchase that it's not a cash advance. You'll usually get a warning that says, hey, this type of transaction is considered a cash advance versus a purchase. So be very mindful of that. The other one is overdraft. So I'll tell you my funny little secret about overdraft. It is a death trap. It's actually a death trap. I remember when I first got overdraft, I was super excited because I'm like, whoa, free money, I can use it until I get my paycheck. So for those who don't know, an overdraft is an amount that the bank gives you in your account where you can use that amount until you get your paycheck or whatever comes in, then it takes it out. So any deposit that goes in the account, they will withdraw it once you use the overdraft, right? So it works similar to a credit card. But here's the catch. There's a cost to it. There's the overdraft interest and there's the overdraft fee. Those are two costs. But here's the wicked part to it. It creates a cycle where every week or every 2 weeks you are overspending, thinking you have enough money when you actually don't, right? I remember when I used to get, my paycheck was about $1,000, I think $1,200 after tax every 2 weeks. And I had $1,000 overdraft. I would use about $900 every 2 weeks. And guess what? Once that paycheck comes, I'm only left with $300 to pay my bill. It creates a never-ending cycle. Be very careful of overdraft. And here's the other one, auto loan. We all love cars and we all love to drive, don't it, right? Let me see the hands of those who have a car right now. I have a car. Yeah? Good stuff. See a lot of drivers out there. Audi, Benz, Lexus. All right, good stuff. So we all have a car. This is another one, right? And a car, in most cases, is not considered to be an asset, right? The moment you buy that car and drive off the property, the car depreciates about 20%. So the cost of depreciation on a new car is really high. What I recommend is that if you're going to get a car, to buy a car that's in really good condition, next to used, but you would not pay for that depreciation. So for example, if I bought my 2020 car, I drove, let's say I put 10,000 kilometers on it, then that might be a good buy from me if I'm selling it because I would have already paid for that depreciation, right? So these are some of the things that you want to consider when you're making those decisions or to take on debt or to invest. So we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of some things here. So what is a mortgage? It's very important, right? And as you can see, there's an economic downturn. A lot of people are afraid of buying a house right now because, you know, they're forecasting a decline in the value of real estate, which is probably true because a lot of people are not spending. But here's what happened on July 1st. The CMHC, which is one of the largest housing insurance agencies in Canada, changed the criteria to obtain a mortgage. So it's actually more stringent right now to get a mortgage, right? So you want to keep in mind as well that in an economic downturn, that interest rates are likely to be lower, a lot lower, right? And as you get into mortgage, you'll start to see certain mortgage terms such as open mortgage, closed mortgage. Be very careful of these concepts. Be sure to ask your mortgage broker or real estate agent specific questions if you don't understand. For me personally, and this is not advice that I'm giving you, I like variable mortgage, especially in an economic downturn. It's riskier, but the interest rates are likely to go down. Anyhow, let's talk about mortgage for a second. So mortgage is a loan from a bank or lender to help you to finance the purchase of a home, right? So this is where the bank is giving you money to buy a house because a lot of us, including myself, is not able to afford a house right away, right? So what are some of the components of a mortgage? So when you take a mortgage, there's interest payment, right? That's the amount, that's the cost of borrowing. So the bank will say, okay, the interest rate is about 4% or 5%, whatever the case may be. That will be your cost of borrowing the mortgage, right? And the next thing is the principal amount. That's the amount that you're borrowing. So if you want a $500,000 house and you come up with a 5% deposit, it would be the difference. The principal amount would be the difference between your deposit and the cost of the house. Question?
Hey, Andre. So if you could just go back in terms of the cost of borrowing the house,
Sure.
which is the interest, right? You just break that down a little bit more so the people who don't understand what interest is can get a better grasp of it.
Sure. Okay. So interest is the amount that you would pay to borrow the mortgage. So for example, if you were to take, let's say, a $500,000 house, the bank will say, okay, your interest rate is about 2%. And that would form part of your payment, your monthly payment, right? So whatever that 2% is, it is built into your payment. So it is the amount that you have to pay to borrow the product, right? It's similar to the interest rate on a credit card. Because a house is considered more secure, the interest rate is a lot lower than a credit card, right? Because the bank can easily repossess the house. So the interest is that price that you have to pay to borrow the money from the bank.
Okay. So the money then goes to the bank.
The money that goes to the bank. So this is not an interest in the sense that a return on investment. It's not an interest that you are getting back, right? It's an interest that you have to pay out to the bank.
All right. Everybody get that?
Are we cool with that? Everyone cool with that? All right. All right. And so again, so principal is the amount that you're borrowing from the bank, right? So if you're borrowing $500,000, then that would be the principal, the amount that you're borrowing. And you'll see principal on both the borrowing side and the investment side. If you're investing in stocks or bonds or real estate, the amount which you're putting in is the principal, right? So it's very similar in the case where you're borrowing a mortgage. The amount that you're borrowing or the loan amount is also called the principal. All right. So another concept that you'll see on mortgage is the term of the loan or maturity, right? Maturity just means how long it will take you to repay the mortgage, right? In some cases, you'll see amortization as well. It's the same thing as the maturity here, right? So, for example, the standard rate or the most frequently used rate in Canada is about 25 years. So that's the maturity. It means your mortgage will come to an end in about 25 years. However, there's a 5-year renewal term. In many cases, that's the standard. Some people will go for 1 year or 3 years. Whatever it is, the renewal term is where you go back to the bank and you say, okay, I am, whether you want to refinance or get a different rate or whatever, you go back to the bank and rediscuss the terms of the mortgage. So that is the renewal. The maturity is when the mortgage ends, when you will finish pay off the property. Are we cool with that? Any questions?
Yes, Andre, I have one question.
Yep.
So when an individual wants to change their mortgage from one bank to another, at what point can they do that?
That can only be done at, it can be done at the renewal. So at renewal, depending on your terms, you can ask to change. Be very careful, and this is where it goes back to the initial phase. If you have a fixed mortgage, a fixed rate mortgage, from my understanding, if you have a fixed rate mortgage and you want to switch, it is a bit harder. And if you break those conditions of the mortgage, it is actually very expensive to break the conditions. So you want to be very careful of that. So the initial discussion before you make those, you sign those documents is very important, right? If you know that in the next 2 years or next 3 years, your circumstances might change, then you want to get as much flexibility as possible. If you don't understand what flexibility means, ask your broker, how can I make my mortgage more flexible? Give some forecast. Say, hey, I'm anticipating a potential change or decline in the future, or I'm planning to buy a second property. How can I make my mortgage as flexible as possible so that I don't have to repay any huge fees or fines if I want to exit? All right. So forecasting and looking into the future is pretty important.
Thank you.
And one last question.
Yep.
So in terms of the terms of the loan, is it better to do a short-term loan or a longer-term loan? Will it have any impact? Obviously, it'll have an impact on how much you pay with interest, but what's better from your perspective?
So short-term or long-term, I mean, when you look at maturity or amortization, the shorter, the less time you take to pay it off, the less interest. The longer it takes. So some people will say, okay, I'm going to go with a 30-year, and I actually like that question. Some people say, I'm going to go with a 30-year mortgage because right now it creates more cash flow. It lowers my monthly payment, and it's more affordable. By doing that, you're increasing the amount you have to pay in interest, right? Because you're now saying to the bank that you want to hold on to their money for a bit longer. And there's a price that comes with that in the form of interest payment that you have to pay the bank. So the longer you go with the mortgage, so a 15-year mortgage will have less interest than a 30-year mortgage. Another thing that might also affect your interest rate is the frequency of payment. So if you go with the rapid payment method that they have, that will lower the cost of borrowing versus if you go with the regular payment like bi-weekly or monthly. You might pay a little bit more in interest versus if you go with the rapid bi-weekly method. All right, so that's another thing to keep in mind if you want to reduce your cost of borrowing. So I know it's a lot easier to say I am going to go with a longer time period because I want to lower my rate, but you always want to keep in mind how much it's going to cost you in the form of interest. It seems like we have some questions coming in.
So somebody said you really need to read all the requirements at the time of accepting the mortgage, and it depends on an individual situation. Somebody else said it depends on the lender. The top 5 banks allow early renewal or switch without penalty within 120 days of maturity. And also, somebody said there's a discharge registration fee, I guess, when you're coming out of a mortgage.
Yeah.
All right. So
yeah, those are all good points. It all depends on the terms when you initially sign that mortgage. So just pay very careful attention. There was actually an article out there. I would ask everyone to go and read it. It actually talks about collateral mortgages, whereas the bank, it actually creates for you an expensive situation to exit. So there's actually a pretty good discussion out there right now on collateral mortgages. So I would ask everyone to read that if they have some time. Might answer some of the questions that were raised just now.
We also have a general question whether the videos or the presentations available after each class, because this individual, Amanda, said that there are some things in this class that she'd like to look back on, but probably not until she's ready to buy. So we are making these classes. They're being recorded, correct, Roderick?
yes, and they will be available on the BBPA website.
Excellent.
Coming days.
And that's bbpa.org, folks.
bbpa.org. So sign up, volunteer, get involved. All right. Another thing that you want to consider here is when the loan is considered late. So that is dependent on the arrangement that you have with your mortgage agent, your mortgage bank or institution. So it's considered late once you miss that payment date, right? So, I mean, some banks or some lenders might have some flexibility that said, if, like it's a week later or whatever, we will understand. But again, find out what the actual terms or the arrangement is with your lender, right? So this will vary based on institution. I know right now during COVID, there are some institutions that are doing mortgage deferrals and some might not. So again, you want to find out these things before going into the a condition. I know some people, depending on your financial situation, you might not be able to get certain mortgages with certain lenders, and you're just stuck with whatever. Again, you want to be prudent, right? Remember that definition of debt management is about being prudent. What if I delay my circumstances a little better? Okay, I need a 680 credit score. Right now I'm at 660. What if I can get it up to 680 in a month or two and improve my situation rather than locking myself in this very stringent and unfavorable situation? So you always want to look at that to see if you can delay the decision a little further and to improve your circumstances, right?
I've got a quick question, Andre. So if your loan is late, if you make a late payment on a mortgage, how long does that stay on your credit score? Or does it impact your immediate credit score?
In some cases, it depends. Some cases it might have an impact, like I think it's about 30 days late before it gets reported. So I know after 30 days that your lender, if they don't hear from you, they might start taking actions against you, such as reporting to the bureau, and that will impact your score. I know some lenders, in my case, I have had late payments before. Once you call ahead and make an arrangement, this is key. Sometimes I know some people will say, I'm not going to call because I don't have the money to pay. It's best if you call and let them know ahead of time to say you're going to be late, right? Can you switch my payment date to this date, or can I make 2 payments in one? So make some type of arrangement. Otherwise, in about 30 days, they're going to report it to the bureau that you're late, and that's going to have a significant impact on your credit score, about a 35% impact, right? So you want to be mindful of that. All right, so we're going to move along. I'll take some more questions in future slides and toward the end. All right, so we talked about principal and interest payments. All right, here's another interesting slide. How does your mortgage get paid off? So there's actually an acronym called PITI. Here, Jamaican says a PITI, I don't know what to do. All right, so PITI here stands for principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. So those are some of the costs that is involved with the mortgage, right? So when you actually take out a mortgage, you will get what is considered an amortization schedule. It will show you the amount that you have to pay over the life of the mortgage. So if you take a 25-year mortgage, it will show you your payment over that 25 years. In the earliest stages of the mortgage up until about renewal, you'll pay a lot more in interest than you are paying toward the principal. So let me break that down. So remember I said earlier, there's the interest that you have to pay for the mortgage, and then there's the principal, the amount that you have to that you are borrowing. In the early phase, majority of the payment will go towards the interest, the amount that it's costing you to borrow. And then a portion will go toward the principal, the amount that you actually borrow, right? And if, for example, you have an unsecured mortgage, meaning you put 5% or 10%, you didn't put 20%, you might be required to get mortgage insurance. So a portion of your payment will also go toward mortgage insurance, right? And that will be, yep, so you have a question?
Okay.
So yeah, that mortgage insurance will be added to the principal of the mortgage, right? So it wouldn't be a separate payment. It would be one lump sum amount that you have to pay. Everything would have been calculated in that monthly or biweekly payment.
And so what will the mortgage insurance cover?
So mortgage insurance will cover things like default. So if you default on the mortgage, some insurance will cover debt. So if it protects the lender in the event that you are unable to repay as the borrower, right? So any circumstances or any situation that might prevent you, the lender, from repaying, the insurance will cover that. In this case, for a CMHC type of insurance, there are additional insurance that you might get on the side that some people will get, such as title insurance or flood insurance or property damage, right? So there are different buckets of insurance, but this one that I'm referring to is protects against default.
And how much is that usually in terms of percentage on the actual mortgage itself?
How much is the
mortgage insurance? Like how much, if you had, like, for instance, a $500,000 house that you got a mortgage for, but you had to pay that mortgage insurance?
I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head, I can get it and send it in the discussion, but I think it's about 5%. I don't know the specific number, but it's not pretty high. I know on a 600,000 mortgage, it came out to be about 12,000 for in my situation. So it's not pretty high. It's a reasonable amount, but I don't know this. I don't remember the specific number off the top of my head right now.
Okay.
All right. All right. So moving along, we're going to talk about auto loan. All right, auto loan and credit card. We did touch on this briefly. So most items that you purchase on your credit card, they depreciate quickly. You know, I've never heard of a person who buys a house using their credit card. So a lot of the things that we buy day to day will depreciate quickly. So for example, if you buy a new pair of Jordan, if you buy a new item of clothing, whatever it is, those items are considered depreciable property, meaning they go down in value, right? So a lot of those items depreciate, like I said, and so it makes it more difficult to build assets using your credit card. The only thing you're left with in terms of your credit card is, for example, the interest rate, right? So that high interest rate, that's not adding any value to your net worth. So it's very important that you actually maintain low purchases or low balance on your credit card. One of my strategies, as I discussed in the previous session, is that I have a line of credit, right? So if I'm unable to make the payment on my credit card, I will transfer money from my line of credit to my credit card. And the reason why I do that is because the interest rate on my line of credit is significantly lower. It's about 3.4%, whereas the interest on my credit card is almost 20%. All right. So, and what that does is that it pays off the credit card. It prevents me from paying the interest, but then it also gives me an additional 30 days to repay my line of credit. Right. So I would recommend something like that if you're able to. Or if you're not, if you're better off getting a line of credit instead of credit card, I'd recommend that as well, right? So just be very careful of your own situation. Interest is a killer, and in the previous lecture I talked about those who don't know the power of compounding pays the price for interest. Those who know it earns it, and that's from Albert Einstein. So auto loan, again, auto loan cars, they depreciate in value. They depreciate very rapidly, and they have a low resale value. So you might buy a nice car for about 30 grand or 40 grand, but in a couple of years, it's probably worth 6,000 or 5,000, probably nothing, right? The salvage value at the end of the car is not good. So the salvage value is the value that the car is worth at the end of the useful life. Not only that, a car costs a lot to maintain. So there is regular repairs and maintenance. There is those monthly payments that you have to make if it's a lease or a finance. There's fuel. There's tire change. You have to change for winter tire versus summer tires. So it's pretty expensive. And the challenge with cars is that a lot of people, including myself, don't take into account the overall cost of operating a car, right? So all those monthly payments, the depreciation, those are all part of the cost in getting a car. So you want to make sure that you're including the total cost of borrowing the car when you're making your decision. Seems like we have a few questions here. I'll take questions.
Okay. Somebody asked, is it beneficial for someone to cancel their credit card?
It depends. It depends. So this actually came up last week. So when we were talking about the age of the credit. So if it is that you have a credit card and you've had that credit card for quite a while, right? You want to be careful that you're going to cancel that card, because part of what affects your credit score and credit history is the age, how long you've had credit. I would probably recommend cutting up that card, right, and never getting a replacement until the bank decides that you're not using it or they're just going to close it from your account, right? You're better off that way. If it is that you've had this car only for a year or 2 years and you've had credit for 10 years, then canceling a credit card might not be as bad. So you want to make sure that it's not having a big impact, right? Because what happens is if you have a 5-year credit card and a 1-year credit card, it's going to take the 6 years, so 1 plus 5, divide it by 2, and that becomes your average length of credit, which is about 3 years, right? So that takes away a 5-year. And so if you were to cancel a 5-year credit card and hold a 1 year, then your credit age will become 1 year, right? So you want to take that into account before canceling the credit card. All right. Any other questions?
No, right now. It's good.
So when I first got my car, I've had my car for 6 years actually, and I love it. It's done me justice. I actually got a new car, okay? You know, fresh out of Jamaica, and you know, Jamaicans ever fresh and ever clean. You have to get clean things, right? So everybody wants clean and new things. So me run to get my clean car, clean brand new car. But it was actually a bad decision, right? It's a decision that I regret. And had I known this 6 years ago, I would have gotten a used car that's in good condition, because you know what? It costs a lot to maintain, and I actually had to pay for that depreciation. Right now, my car when I bought it was about 30 grand, and I went to the dealership the other day to get a estimate, and the guy's gonna tell me, yeah, I can buy that for 3 grand. Now, tell me, what this guy think? One, buy my car for 3 grand after I pay 30,000 and maintain it so much. So that's what I'm talking about. So you actually lose a lot of money, and it costs a lot over the years to maintain. All right? I can take a couple questions here. See a lot of questions coming in. The questions are...
Okay, one question you have here is, how long does the bank normally give you to pay off your credit card?
All right, so here's the thing. There's no deadline. They will give you a minimum monthly payment. So if you use $1,000 on your credit card, what you will see is your minimum monthly payment. If you choose to make that minimum monthly payment, it might take you a year, 2 years, or 10 years, depending on how much the minimum monthly payment. So for example, if you had $1,000 on the credit card and they say, okay, the monthly payment is 10, you divide that by 10, the 1,000 by 10, so that will give you the amount of monthly payment you'll need to make. If the balance is higher, if you had a $20,000 balance and your minimum monthly payment is about $50, then that might take you 20 years. So it might take forever. So there's not really a deadline. It's just it's dependent upon whether or not you choose to make the minimum payment. However, you are required to make a payment within about 30 days of using the credit card, right? So
sorry, Andre. Sorry, one short second. Folks, please mute your microphones. There's noise bleeding into the conversation.
Thanks for that.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So if you don't make that minimum payment at least, then you will be considered late on your card. So that's what you have to be careful about. As we go forward in the presentation, I'm going to show you different debt management strategy and how you can apply them to your situation. Another question there?
Yes, we have a couple. What is the best age to get a credit card?
The best age is when you have a job and you can repay the credit card. If you're 16 and you're responsible, right? Then you have a job and you can repay that credit card, then you can get the credit card to start building your credit history. What I recommend for younger people is to actually get a card with a responsible adult. So, you know, that could be your mom or your dad or a sibling that you find to be very responsible. So you can get a credit card, a secured credit card, and that will help you to build credit history. And you will have somebody responsible who can hold you accountable, right? My rule of thumb for my credit card is to not get a credit limit that's higher than one paycheck. So right now my credit limit on my card is $1,500, and I don't care how much expensive the vacation is. I will put the difference. So if the trip is $2,000, I'm going to put an extra $500 with my credit card, use it to buy the ticket and then repay it instantly. But I'm not going to create a situation where it becomes easy to put myself in debt, right? So as soon as you're responsible, I think responsibility is key. As soon as you think you're responsible enough and able to repay the credit card, then get a credit card. I know people who don't have a job and they have a $5,000 credit limit. And I'm like, how do you don't have a job and have a $5,000 credit card? It doesn't make any sense, because we are human beings and something is going to come up and we're going to have to make purchases, right? And that's going to create a never-ending debt cycle for us.
Great. I have a comment and a question. Somebody said they heard that when we have a credit card, and even if you don't use it, it counts on your credit score, because in the mind of the bank, you can use the money they wouldn't know that you've, for instance, cut it up or put it in a cupboard somewhere. That's a comment. The question is, how much room should you leave on your credit card to be in good standing and maintain good credit? For example, a credit card with a $3,000 limit. So how much room should you leave on your credit card to be in good standing and maintain a good credit limit?
All right, so good question. In terms of the comment, I don't think that's true. And, you know, I always use my wife as an example. Like, I was told that you need multiple credit products, or you have to use your credit products frequently, and all of them to be able to build good credit. You know, when I met my wife, she only had one credit card. And I had every credit card you can think of. I had revolving, I had line of credit, I had credit card, I had student loan, I had auto loan. My credit score was 500. Hers was 800 with one credit card, right? That she hardly used. So if you're using it, and you don't have to use it like all the time, but if you're using it like once or twice, probably every 2 months, and you're making the payment in full, then that will help you to build good credit, right? It's a myth, in my opinion, that you need multiple credit products to be able to have a good credit score. Yes, having good multiple credit products, here's the difference. We have to look at score and we have to look at credit history. Now, if you're more focused on credit score, one credit card can give you a good credit score. However, if you want to look healthier to a financial institution and show that you're responsible, then this is where more diversity comes in. If you have more diverse product and you're meeting all of those obligations, then you might look more attractive. So it all depends on what your objective is and what you're trying to achieve, right? When I was 20, I was trying to have good credit score. I wasn't trying to buy a house or anything. So be very mindful of that, right? Hopefully I addressed the comment. So the earlier comment, I don't know about that. But the credit card, it seems like we have more questions coming in here.
No, I think we're good. I think it was just a response.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So yeah, like there's a lot of myths out there about what might or what might not affect your score. The key factors in terms of what affect your score, so it's payment history, right? The age of credit, collection, right? So you want to make sure that you're making your payments on time. You want to make sure there's no collection. You want to make sure that you have a good credit history, so you're building credit, and you want to make sure that you're not utilizing too much credit. I believe the next part of the other question was around debt utilization. So if you have a $3,000 credit limit, what's a good amount to use or maintain? It's recommended that you use about 30%, right? 30% of that limit. So that would work out to be about $900, I believe. Forgive me if my math is off. But a 30% is considered a good utilization, right? If it is that you're using more than 30%, let's say about 50%, and then you're going for a credit product, that might be a signal that you are relying too much on credit, right? So using 50%, let's say this month, let's say in July you decide to use 50% or 90%, is not in and of itself a bad thing. If you can repay that 90% before the bank reports it to the bureau, then you're fine, right? There's no issue. It's all about when you repay it, right? If it is that you're unable to repay the full amount by the time the bank reports, that's when it's a good idea to actually bring your balance down to 30%. If you're unable to do so, it's not a big thing if you're not going to apply for a credit product in the next month or two. It all depends on when you're going to apply for a product. I always tell people, and a lot of people are very caught up on credit score, and it brings me back to those who got an A in university and they got 89% versus my A, which is 80%. Which one affects your GPA the most? Both of them are the same, right? So don't worry about an 800 credit score versus a 780 credit score. I'll tell you this, once your credit score is 680 or higher, you're in good standing. All right, so now we're actually going to take a look at a credit card statement here. Fun stuff. The more plastic, the better. I hear this a lot. I know quite a few of my friends, they have credit card that gives you air points, credit cards that gives you meal, credit cards that do everything. Well, that's good stuff. The more is not better. Find one credit card or two that gives you a similar benefit. I like credit card that gives me cash back, right? Because it gives me flexibility to buy anything I want. I don't like credit cards that limits my ability to buy a particular product. And so I'm going to use this credit card here to like illustrate to you. One second. So please note that this is just an example and it should not be relied on to make any decisions, nor am I advocating or represent the institution being used here, okay? So we're just using it as an example here to look over some of the aspects of a credit card. So this is what a typical credit card statement looks like. At the top, it will show you the period that the statement covers, right? So the statement date is here. There's also information about the payment from the last month. So here you'll find all your purchases in the previous month. Let's see here, what else is here? So down here is where you'll find the important information. So
just a quick note, it's not showing right now on the screen.
Not showing? Okay, 1 second. All right, are we seeing?
Yep, there we go.
All right, sorry about that. All right, yeah. So again, this is what a typical statement looks like. Here's where you'll find the important information. So down here, you'll see what your new balance is, right? So your new balance is X amount, the minimum payment required, and the payment due date. So this is the important date. This is when you need to repay the amount. If you're unable to make the payment by this date, then you need to reach out to the bank and say, hey, I'm unable to make my payment by this date. Can you push my payment back to this, right? And I'll tell you this, the banks are very flexible. They'll actually work with you. And they'll say, okay, when can you repay? And you'll say, okay, I can repay when I get my next paycheck, which is X date. So always, always reach out to your lender and say, hey, I can't meet this payment date, right? And this will tell you, here is where your credit amount, so new balance. So let's say you have $1,000 credit limit, your new balance is 300. So that means you're using 30%, right? Because it will be 300 divided by 1,000, and that gives you the percentage or your debt utilization. Right? So those are some of the key aspects that I want to highlight: the minimum payment, the payment date, and the new balance. So those are the three most important things that you look at. You can also see what's going on, right? You know, we live in a 21st century. There's a lot of scams. There's a lot of things happening on the internet. So you want to make sure that the purchases, you're the one who make those purchases. All right? All right. So moving along in the interest of time. So another thing that's also very, very important, and this one is very key, annual percentage rate. Now, a lot of people are not familiar with annual percentage rate or what it means. So annual percentage rate is your interest rate stated as an annual amount. So what that does is that it takes into account all the interest and the cost for the entire year and puts it in one interest rate. That's important because sometimes you go to a bank or to a lender and it will say the interest rate is 4%, but the annual percentage rate, when you account for all the costs and fees, might work out to be about 5 or 6%, right? Because it doesn't show you the aggregate or the total amount of the interest in many cases. So be very mindful. And this will take us to the next type of debt, which is the ugly debt. And here you'll see why a payday loan is an ugly debt. All right, even though I was bad with my money, I have never taken a payday loan in my life. And that's one accomplishment. Even if I haven't accomplished anything else, this is one thing I can say I've accomplished. And this is why a payday loan is bad. Here, I'll show you. So why is it ugly? Because of APR. A lot of people, like I said, don't take into account APR. So for example, in Ontario, the interest rate on a payday loan is 15%. By itself, that sounds pretty good. It's cheaper than my credit card because my credit card is 24%. And wrong. It's actually not. So if it is that you are taking a payday loan every 2 weeks, the APR would be about 390%. It's 15% times 26 biweekly payments. So the actual interest rate that you'll pay at the end of the year if you borrowed a payday loan every payday is 390%, which is why the province had to get very strict and asking payday loan companies to publish the interest rate. It's actually ridiculously expensive. So as you go for a payday loan, you want to say, okay, today a one-time borrowing is fine, 15%. Borrow twice, it becomes 30%, right? You want to keep that in mind. And so that's why payday loan is pretty bad. Question?
Comment. And for those people who live in racialized communities, you'll see a dominance of payday loan companies in our communities. And just want to be wary of that, again, because those interest rates are extremely high. And, you know, it doesn't make sense paying a company to cash a check or to get a loan and having such high repayment rates. So be very, very careful. And
absolutely.
Throughout the rest of the community, or even in the city of Toronto, if you're, or in cities, that these payday loan companies are usually in lower income neighborhoods. Okay, so be very wary of that. It is a trap, and we can say that without a doubt. So I think we've
I think also, Rod, we should add, you know, because we're not going to actually name the companies because we don't want to be held liable for anything. But you know, you guys make sure when you see those signs that say, you know, get cash for your check, this, all those things. Look for those businesses in your neighborhoods. And you'll recognize that along with some other things, there's a definite sort of predatory, is the word I'm going to use, approach to people who are living paycheck to paycheck or having some financial struggles. It looks very appealing. It looks like candy or sweet drinks or a burger and fries. It looks really, really good, but it's not good for you.
Okay, we got a couple points here.
That's pretty good. Those are good points. I agree.
We have Nathan. Nathan had a point. Or I think he might have just been putting up his hand. Or Nathan, do you have a point?
And we want to encourage folks, you can get on your mic.
No, I don't have a point.
Okay. Thanks, Nathan. Folks, you can get on the mic. I notice a predominance of the people are not sharing their video or their audio. The chat is great, but we need to network and see how many of us share the same challenges and circumstances so that, you know, we can move forward together as a group, as a people. Very, very important, especially in these particular times. So I encourage you to share who you are. Also communicate in the chat. There's some other experts in the chat room who have provided some really salient advice, really valuable advice. So don't be shy to say, hi, I really like your comments. What is it that you do? Who do you work for? Is there any way you can help me? I'm trying to buy a car, a house, a boat, whatever you're trying to buy. Okay?
Okay, so we got Amanda. Good morning, sister.
Good morning. As you can see, my name's Amanda. I'm from Ottawa, Canada. And I had a question regarding auto loans. And I know in this chat, the age variances are very different, like from 16 up. I'm in my late 20s, but I was wondering about my strategy. I bought my first car last year, and it's used. And I did some research as to why buying a used car is probably better. And going to a dealership for a lot of people, especially women, can be very challenging because there's that unconscious bias. Right. So when I went to the dealership, I went with my brother, and besides them only speaking to my brother, even though he wasn't the purchaser, the dealership finance officer offered me a financing loan, and at the time I thought it was probably a good idea. But they never said it was open-ended. What the dealership officer said was that you have to pay at least 6 months worth of payments before you can pay out your loan fully, and I already had the money. So just a note for anyone thinking about buying a car, make sure to read the contract, because the contract might say it's an open-ended loan, which means you could pay it off at any time, but they won't tell you that. So I wanted to know if my strategy of paying it off as soon as I could and then using, let's say, a line of credit due to my lower interest rate on my line of credit, was that the right move? Is that something you would recommend, despite many professionals saying don't use a line of credit to buy a car?
Well, I mean, it always goes back to, so there are two aspects to that scenario. So when you look at the line of credit, so the first one is when you use the line of credit, so you're utilizing 100% of that debt, right? So that will potentially have an impact on that credit score, right? If you don't have any immediate use for to make an additional credit decision, then you might not be too worried about the impact to the credit score, right? Because you're going to be paying it off in a certain period of time. But if you're looking at it from a cost of borrowing perspective to say, hey, right now I actually want to pay a lower interest, for me, it will make more sense to use the line of credit to pay it off. And if you have a lower interest rate. So if it is, because I think for used car, and this is one thing to note, when you actually buy a car, the used car interest rate that the dealership offers is higher than if you got a new car, right? So it's probably about 7%, right? So, and right now, especially right now, interest rates are going down on the line of credit, right? Because, especially if you have a variable rate. If you're going to be paying 3% interest, then you're saving a whole 4%. That to me makes sense, right? From a cost of borrowing perspective on the interest rate, right? So those are the two parts, the impact to the score that you have to keep in mind, and then the impact in terms of cost of borrowing. The strategy that you described, you said, you know, you had a higher interest rate on your car, you want to lower your cost of borrowing, so it makes sense. Some dealership might discourage this, or, you know, some people discourage it because a lot of people, when they make decisions, they don't take into account the cost of borrowing. They're just looking at it and saying, hey, no, it's bad to use all your credit, the credit that you have. Don't do that. If you're telling me that, hey, I'm going to use my $10,000 credit card to pay for the car, then I'd be, whoa, I'd be very worried, right? So yeah, I think your strategy could work. And also keep in mind, if you're able to pay it off faster, because what I did, I paid off my car a lot faster than the time they gave me to pay it off. And you'll save more in interest that way as well.
Okay, thank you for your feedback. I thought you made some really good points in thinking, you know, before I even decided to buy my car, I wanted to try and calculate how much more interest I would pay annually. And it turned out to be about like $1,000 more if I stayed with the finance loan. So
exactly. Thanks. Yep, there you go. Good decision.
All right.
So we haven't.
And we'll ask questions at the end for Andre. If you've got questions, just keep out your hands up, and then we'll ask questions at the end of his presentation. All right.
Sounds good. All righty. Good discussion. All right. So right now we're going to go into some debt management strategy. And so this is, I like to plan. I like to look at the decision before I make the decision. And so debt management strategies will help you to do that. In the interest of time, I'll just move to the debt management calculator. But the three methods, or the methods that I like the most, is the minimum payment, the snowball method, and the avalanche method. And I'm going to go into detail of those strategies in a second. But before I do so, I actually want to bring to your attention that there's a debt management calculator that you can actually use to forecast your decision. And I'm going to show you right now what it looks like. And my friend Amanda here from Ottawa, this is something that you can also use when you're forecasting those decisions, and it will show you the difference even within the strategies, right? So let's take a look at this right here before I go into what the strategies mean. So, and this website, you can go to creditcanada.com. This is actually a government, you know, the government works with Credit Canada to provide information to Canadians about debt management, etc. So there's a lot of resources on this site that you can actually use. So let's say I had a $10,000 loan here, right? I put in 10,000, and then I put in my interest rate. So whatever your interest rate is, that's what you put here. So I put 5% on the 10,000. Let's say I had another debt balance of 2,000, right? And I put 20%. It will tell me right here that my monthly payment is about $300. I hit calculate, and it will walk me through all the methods. So minimum payment, as most people are probably familiar with, is where you actually pay the minimum required. So
I'm not seeing that, Andre. Are you showing that right now?
Sorry.
Okay.
I guess I'm not sharing like my actual screen. It's screen per screen. Yeah, it's sharing each screen that I pull up. All right, are we seeing it now?
Yeah.
All right, so let's go back to the top here. All right, so yeah, so again, this is a calculator that you can use to calculate the payments required, right? So let's say I had two debt. I had one for 10,000 at a 5% interest, one for 2,000 at 20% interest. I literally plug in the amount here and put the interest rate. At the bottom, I'll click calculate your savings, right? So this walks me through each of the methods. So the first one is the minimum payment. So if I were to make a minimum payment on these two balances that I just inputted, it will take me 21.6 years to pay off. And so that answered the question that came up earlier, how long it will take. So there's the time based on this the debt load here. 21.6 years. And you would pay $5,423 in interest. Very significant if you make the minimum payment. So let's look at the snowball method. So as you can see here, the snowball method is actually forming a snow. So you're starting with the lowest balance and you're gradually increasing to the largest balance, right? So this one, the biggest advantage to this is that there's some kind of motivation. So once you pay off one balance, it kind of motivates you to go to the next, right? So here, this will take you 3.8 years. Here's the cost of borrowing. It will only cost you $1,625. So now we're already seeing how significant it is when we delay paying off things, when we make a longer time period. The difference between the two is about $4,000 in interest payment. Very significant. Now, the thing about the snowball method is that it doesn't really take into account interest, right? Because it doesn't start with the highest interest first. It actually starts with the lowest debt. So when making this decision, you're not thinking about interest, you're thinking about the smallest balance first. Now, the difference, which is the avalanche method, and as you can hear, avalanche, if you were to go into the mountains and a big avalanche come, yeah, drop it right down, right? So this one takes into account interest, right? In this scenario, it works out to be the same as the snowball method, but again, $1,625 in interest versus $5,400 here. So, right, this is a useful tool to look at the different methods. So look at your debt that you have and see which method is best. Give you your personal scenario. The cost of borrowing is real, and that's where a lot of people within our community give most of our money. The cost of borrowing. So keep that in mind. Every time you take out a loan, you're going to hear a little Andre buzzing in the ear. Remember the cost of borrowing. All right? So keep that in mind, please. All right, so going back to my presentation here. All right, so any question regarding what I just discussed there? All right, so the avalanche method, so the strategy, so this just gives you some more insight. The strategy involves paying the most money you can towards the debt with the highest interest rate. All right, pros, save money in the long run because you save on interest. Immediate gratification of seeing a balance shrink fast. All right, so snowball method. Again, think of a snowball. You start with the lowest balance and you graduate to the largest balance. It doesn't take into account interest payment. All right?
Morning, Andrew.
Good morning.
I just wanted to chime in here that one of the challenges with the minimum payment is that you are really just paying the interest. Minimum payment is about $2 or $3 above the interest payment. So if each time you get your credit card, all you do is pay the interest that you just incur.
Right.
Ever to repay it. So I always say to folks, never pay the minimum payment when you can do better. Because all you're doing is paying the interest. And that is why some folks say, I've got my credit card, I have it for 15 years, and the balance never seems to go down, even though I pay on time all the time. It's because you're paying the minimum payment or just a little bit above the minimum payment.
Yeah, good point. Yep, so you're literally just carrying the balance and you're just paying interest, right?
And that was the wise words of our treasurer at the BDPA, Michael Pinnock. Full knowledge. If you have any questions, I can't even get into all of his accolades, but reach out to treasurer at BDPA if you have any specific questions on, this topic or any other topics also.
Yeah. Definitely, Roger, definitely.
And so these slides are just going more in detail of like everything that we pretty much discussed already, right? Payday loan method. So this is another method. Avoid payday loan at all costs, just like Farley and Roderick said. If you don't have to, if it is an emergency situation and you can't do better, then go for it. But don't make it a habit, right? we need to actually start earning interest within our community and stop paying interest, right? So avoid at all costs. The con here, even though there are few, the pros seem like a long description here. Payday loans are quick, easy to obtain, generally requiring nothing more than proof of age. Payday loans are an extremely expensive way to borrow money. That's your biggest con. And it creates a never-ending debt cycle, right? There's debt consolidation. We talked about debt consolidation earlier. The example that Amanda gave, that's one example. If you have a line of credit and you use it to pay off the car, that's consolidating the debt into one, right? So you're taking the balance from that car and transferring it to your line of credit at a lower interest rate. You can actually go into a financial institution as well, and they will actually help you to consolidate. There's usually a cost associated with going that method if you walk into the institution, right? And then there's debt settlement strategy. Usually offer the ability to settle your debt for pennies on the dollar. So they advertise that you can pay lower to settle at this strategy. It says it seems like a great solution where you can save money up front, but debt settlement services, the big con or some of the cons is that and this comes from the Consumer Alert, Financial Consumer Alert from Financial Consumer Agency of Canada. So they've been a lot of shady practices, upfront fees. So what they're saying is that, okay, you have a $20,000 debt. I can get you to pay off that debt for $5,000, but then, or $10,000. But then they're like, okay, but you need to pay us like $8,000 or $9,000 in fees or upfront costs, right? So be very mindful as you go into these things. So always think about the cost of borrowing. Again, cost of borrowing comes in the form of interest. It comes in the form of fees. It comes in the form of penalty. Always, always, always think about the cost of borrowing. And so that concludes this week's segment. Next week, we're going to talk about cash flow management, how to manage cash flow, how to manage money, what we should do with money, right? Because I know a lot of people earn money. One of the things in our community is that we've always been trained and educated about how to make money, but how do we manage money? What do we do with that money when we get it? Stay tuned for the next session where we're going to talk about how we actually manage money, how we increase our cash flow and to stay out of debt and stay out of a paycheck to paycheck situation. Thank you again for listening. I had a great session and I'll see you guys next week. I'm going to turn over now to...
Okay, so before we go, I think there might have been a couple quick questions that we had from some of the people in the who are participating. Troydell, did you have a question? Troydell, did you have a question?
Oh, no.
Okay, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, no, it was in response to Andre's question about raising your hand, if etc.
Okay. If anybody has a question now for Andre, you can please unmute yourself and ask the question. If you've got any questions.
Last chance to dance, folks.
All right.
Until next week, anyway.
Well, stay tuned because we're about to get fly, my brother.
Well, we flipped and we floss, so it's time to get fly.
Borders are opening, so let's fly.
So, Rod, we had some homework that we issued last week. I'm not sure how many people got that homework done, right? We want to make sure that folks are developing on both sides of their lives, their financial literacy life and also the life skills aspect of which combines and complements your financial literacy very, very much. So could folks indicate who did their homework? We asked you to identify 3 interests, 3 personality traits, and 3 skill sets. Did anyone accomplish that task? Or if you're here for the first time and you can answer those questions now, that would be appreciated as well.
All right, so we're going to KKMA. All right. I'm just going to unmute you here, my sister. Okay, you're online. Hi, how are you this morning?
Morning, I'm good.
Excellent.
My interests are community service, business, and math. My skills are problem solving, public speaking, and collaboration. My personality is kind, caring, and innovative.
Well, you know what?
Sorry, what was the last word?
Innovative.
Innovative.
Nice. Excellent. Fantastic.
No, let's give her a round of applause again. She's the first person to stand up on the fly part right here. Excellent.
Absolutely.
For your courageousness, my sister, we're going to definitely send you a $25 gift card also. All right? We're going to start off on that note right now. So please share your information. We'll actually get your information on the private chat so we can send you that gift card. Excellent work. So, again, knowing your interests, personality traits, and your skill sets, what we call your IPS, is in actuality, when aligned with a career, when aligned with a destination, is your GPS. It will help you get to that point where you're aiming for and where you're headed. So we definitely need to know our interests, our personality traits, and our skill sets. Does anybody else want to share their IPSs with us today? Just put up your hand and we'll go through it. All right, Amanda also wants to share hers. All right, Amanda.
Sorry, I muted myself by accident. Okay, so some of my interests are eco-friendly products, fitness, and world travel. Some of my personality traits is I'm an extrovert, I'm friendly, and I'm open-minded. Some of my skill sets are public speaking / communications. I actually work in communications. I'm organized, and I'm a pretty good budgeter, I like to think.
All right.
Nice. So here's the thing, folks, to both Kayla and Amanda. What we'd love for you to do, and those of you who are working on your interest, personality traits, and skill sets, we want you to try to align that. Now, in Amanda's case, you may already you said you work in communications, right? So there's a definite alignment between the interest, personality traits, and skill sets that you identified and how that aligns with your career. For young people, as the young lady Kayla who spoke initially, what we're hoping is that you can look at your interests, personality traits, and skill sets, or find someone to advise you, or you can ask us the questions. How does that align with the career path you should choose for yourself, so that your career is ultimately an extension of who you are as a human being? The people who are self-proclaimed enjoying what they do for a living, like myself, I tell people all the time, I don't work for a living, I live for my work. That's because I've chosen my professions. Okay, so for me, it's music, entertainment, and the sports industry. So I've chosen those things since I was 15 years old. So I've always done that. So I don't have bad days at work and so on and so forth. People get tired of me saying I'm great. I feel great, right? So what we want you to do, young people, and those of you who are trying to figure these things out, figure them out. Let's go beyond trying to actual execution and implementation. Know exactly what it is and who we are and why we are and what we are, so we can make really educated choices that are not harmful to ourselves or anyone else. So you can wake up on Monday morning feeling like the rest of the world feels on Friday afternoon.
All right. You got some snaps. You got some claps. That's all good. So, Farley, we've got something called the 7 C's of empowerment. So to help people in terms of finding out who they are and to help them change and help them transition to be the best evolved sense to be the best evolved being of self. And
version of self, yes.
7 C's right now with everybody. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen with you, and we're going to get on to the 7 C's. Okay. Are we ready to roll?
The 7 C's: conscious choice, curiosity, challenge, courage, change, commitment, communication.
Okay. So today we are going to talk about conscious choice through the power of your voice. All right. So when you hear that word conscious, what comes to mind? When you hear that word conscious, what is the first thing that pops up in your mind?
Awake, somebody said.
Okay, definitely, 100%.
Being aware, somebody said. Present.
Okay. Anything else? Awake, present, aware.
Introspection. Mindful.
Mindful. Absolutely. So what's the inverse of being conscious? What's the opposite?
Conscious.
Sorry?
Unconscious.
Unconscious. So when you're unaware.
Exactly.
Somebody else
said passive. I love that.
Okay.
As the opposite of conscious.
Right.
Conscious.
So in every day, of our lives, we must intentionally make conscious choices. When we do not exercise conscious choices, it could be played out as we're making rash decisions or decisions that we haven't thought about. And as we know, as black people, well, number one, and as obviously young people, number two, we have to make choices that are going to benefit us in everything that we do. Because every action has a reaction. So if we're not making good choices, we're not making conscious choices where we're aware, and especially where they can have an impact on our lives, we have to check ourselves before we wreck ourselves.
Absolutely.
Check yourself before you wreck yourself.
So one of the things I want to offer folks is to think of the term human being as a verb. We know a verb is an action word, right? So being, with the last three letters being ing, means that we're a species of action. So if you're not applying action or any form of activism or whatever you believe in, but action specifically to your life, then as a human being, then you're not actually being human. Think of that. It's very important to understand. We are an action species. That's why we're called human beings, right? So once again, if you don't have any action, forward thinking, developmental improvement, evolutionary action in your life, then you're actually not being human. Okay, so conscious choices and action, when you actively are involved in the decisions in your life and they're not harmful to yourself or to anyone that you care about, certainly.
So when we take today's lecture from Andre, or the lesson, the training today's that Andre presented, why is it important to make conscious choices when it's involving your credit or in terms of your financial health? Why is it important to make a conscious choice based on that? You could either put it in the chat or you can answer live right now.
Yeah, I'll read out the chats as they come in. Somebody said, somebody complimenting my comment. It's actively changing is the second comment from Yerub. It's actively changing. Okay, so we're looking for comments on how this applies to your financial literacy. Somebody said so that you don't get into debt.
Absolutely.
Takes personal responsibility.
One more time, my sister.
Takes personal responsibility.
Absolutely.
Take personal responsibility. That's very active. Absolutely.
Right. And we always say there's nobody in this world who matters as much as you do. And to be the most evolved individual that you can be, we have to make conscious choices. We all know people, we all have made unconscious choices in the past, and some of them might not have worked out to be in our favor. So we actively and intentionally have to make sure that when we're making a choice, especially where it can have a consequence that is not positive in our life, we've got to make a conscious choice to make sure that we are doing the best for ourselves.
No doubt. Somebody said, Rod, being aware and taking steps to uplift yourself and others. I love the personal responsibility comment. Everyone on this call right now is taking responsibility to uplift themselves. That's so great. I absolutely agree. And I want to remind folks that we had a challenge for a prize to bring a guest to this particular session. We're gonna extend that challenge throughout the course. So next week, bring a guest. If you truly believe you're being uplifted by the sharing of this information, we want our numbers to grow so we can create a critical mass of black people who are focused on their financial literacy. Excellent comment.
And I think everybody's choice at 10 o'clock a.m. on a Saturday to be here with us is conscious, right?
Absolutely.
It is intentional, it is purposeful. And I want you to give yourself a round of applause. I really want you to give yourself a round of applause for taking initiative and taking the steps to not just improve yourself, but to increase your knowledge base. And what we
Jasmine Ola, sorry. Also, Jasmine Ola has a question, Rod.
Okay. I can't see the chat, but if you could read out the question.
Yeah. I'm just going to get the... Okay. So, Jasmine, what was your question? I think she's actually going to ask it on camera.
All right.
Yeah, I'm just going to ask it live if that's okay.
Right.
Excellent. We prefer that.
Cool. Just surrounding making conscious choices, I'm wondering how you do that within a threshold where you're not overthinking the choice and relying too much on logic. Personally, I'm somebody that uses my gut a lot. But sometimes when I'm trying to be conscious about a choice, I tend to get anxious and I'm overthinking because I'm constantly considering everything that can go wrong. So I'm wondering how you kind of rein that in to make sure it's still like the right choice to make. without thinking it to a point where you're not making a choice at all.
Okay, so what the formula is made up of, it's sort of a, if you wish, it's a mixture of things that contribute to the outcome you desire. So your gut instinct is critical. That's your grassroots instincts based on things like your upbringing, the person that you are as a human being. The academic is what you've learned in terms of your brain, right? So there are certain things that you've learned that are considered basic principles of decision making. Right? And then the third piece is the research that you do for the parts that you don't know. So your gut instinct inclines you to choose to lean or to gravitate towards something. Your academic validates that gut instinct. And then the research, the part the gap that maybe the academic doesn't fill, right, is the research you do. And the research you do is by asking questions from those who care about you or doing actual research, whether it be on the internet. And like I did in school, if I was doing a research project, I would look for all the common denominators of perspectives, but I'd also try to include at least one or two outliers from people who had were not necessarily status quo. And we know that for a fact. Right now in Canada, we've got people like John A. MacDonald and J.S. Woodsworth and William Lyon Mackenzie and Wilfrid Laurier, who were slave owners, whose names, in my opinion, should be taken down off of every monument, every street, everything that was named after them. And people will say, oh, that was back then. But no, it still affects us today, right? So we have to make a conscious choice in this example to pave a road for you young folks who are coming after us to not feel a sense of intimidation or lack of belonging. So to your point, once again, 3 elements. Your gut instinct, your academic knowledge, and the research you do to fill the gap in between.
And it's very important for us to voice our conscious choice, right?
Very important.
Once we put it out there in the atmosphere, it has taken life, right? And the more people who are aware of what we are intending to do, purposely intending to do, will often be able to subconsciously support us, right? So like for instance, if I say, hey, you know what? I'm going to join a financial literacy program. And Mona knows about Flip, Floss, and Fly. She can say, you know what? Flip, Floss, and Fly. It's a program that the BBPA puts up every Saturday morning starting at 10 a.m. And it's very informative and there's great chat and it's a learning environment that everybody can join into, right? So you put it out there. People have the opportunity at that point in time to chime into that chat. And again, once you put it out there, it is in the atmosphere. It is in the world itself. So you have to allow people to understand what your intentions are, what your motives are, so that they can also support you inadvertently or advertently.
There's one addition to that as well, and it's called cognitive recognition. So here's what happens. This sort of dovetails on what Roderick just said. So when you put it out there into the atmosphere or the universe, what happens is people who care about you and have that, like Rod said, subconsciously in their mind, when they're walking through a mall or down the street or into a grocery store and they see a sign that relates to what you shared to them, they become cognitively alerted by that because it resonates with what you've shared with them. So this is the real benefit of sharing and voicing who you are. That's why we say conscious choice using the power of your voice.
Okay. So for this week coming up, the homework that we're going to, actually before we can get to the homework, we'll take 5 more minutes in terms of asking people, what conscious choices do you make on a daily basis?
Or have you made in the last week even?
Okay, oh yeah, even within the last week. What conscious choices? So things that you have intentionally chosen to do.
And we'll keep it positive in terms of your plans for your own future. Like your choices should always be contributing to the future and the outcome you've envisioned for yourself. We'll talk about visioning later on in the course. But what choices have you made in the last week that contribute to the outcome you've identified for yourself? The positive outcome. Somebody said, take care of myself. Can we get a little more detail on that?
So one thing that we also want to do within this section, we want to substantiate your claims. So taking care of yourself, what does that look like, right? So we want you to be able, to express yourself as much as you feel comfortable sharing in that regard, but we also want you to be able to share with other people so that they can learn how to do it also. Because again,
precisely,
each one. All right?
Precisely.
So what does taking care of yourself look like? If you could answer that, KK. Does it mean working out? Does it mean eating better? Focusing on...
Okay, so go ahead.
Somebody said that. That's an excellent example of conscious choice. Okay? And a lot of people... Sorry, 2 seconds, sorry. Especially right now within this pandemic that we're all enduring, allowing people to know that you're taking care of yourself and putting yourself first in the sense of self-care is extremely important because, again, people can share opportunities and people can be cognizant of your choices.
Somebody said I've been researching more brands and trying to look into if they are really black-owned since finding Shea Moisture products weren't. Yeah, so that's an important thing when we talk about closing the gap that anti-black racism and colonization has created. You know, we need to be self-empowering and support black businesses to the best of our ability. So that point is very well taken. Someone else said signing up for a 6-week boot camp from a trial that started this week. So that's, again, physical health. It doesn't make sense accumulating wealth if you haven't taken care of your physical health. Very, very important. Attending BBPA sessions on Wednesdays and Saturdays is educating and empowering themselves. Fantastic. You have to learn from outside as well as within. Okay? Educating myself more on the BLM, Black Lives Matter movement, and spreading awareness. I have a live comment and somebody has a live comment and question. Okay, we'll take that live comment and question right now from Judith, please.
Judith, you're on the air. Okay. You have to unmute yourself there, Judith. We can't hear you, though. You want to try it one more time? No, we're unmuted.
She says she's unmuted now, but we still can't hear her.
Yeah, it says you're unmuted. Let's see, 1 second here. I think you're still muted there on your side, Judith. Or maybe you have to turn up the mic. For some reason or another, we're not hearing you, unfortunately. Okay. Any other comments? If you want to put your question or comment in the chat, Judith.
Yeah, just for now. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So for the next week, we want every one of you. Oh, I think we've got somebody here also. 1 second. Galaxy, did you have? Okay. I'm not too sure if they had a point. Okay. But anyways, yeah. So for the next week, we want every one of you to think specifically about conscious choices that you're making. And we want
you to them.
Yes. And then also, excuse me, if you could write down a few of the conscious choices you make during the week and then be able to share what impact they've had in your life. Okay? And we also want you to think of times where you have not made conscious decisions and what impact that may have had in your life. And we want you also, last thing, when you're thinking about these conscious choices or unconscious choices, we want you to think about the overall impact. So important issues in your life where we've made these choices and, again, just being able to assess that impact that it had on your life. Okay?
Judith was able to share her thought, and her thought is that her conscious choice was to share with her sister that she's seeking financial literacy, and she referred her to this webinar series, and she said she is so happy, and she's glad to have shared her choices and found us all. So absolutely, and when you say all, Judith, we know you mean not just the facilitators, but the other people who are making this like-minded choice. Trust me, when we align our thoughts, we empower ourselves to make the right collective decision. And we'll talk about that going down the road as well. But we align our thoughts and we make collective decisions that we get collective beneficial outcomes. Somebody asked a question, what guidance do you have from someone that is not great with public speaking and lacks confidence and trying to improve themselves? So we're in the cyber world now. What I would encourage that person to do, and we could certainly have an offline conversation about this. I do happen to work with speakers and do a lot of public speaking myself. So I want to share with you that the first step is to start working with people who care about you and present in front of them. Could be about the morning breakfast, could be about lunch, could be about what you're wearing that day. Start speaking in front of people who care about you. And then you'll gain the confidence and they'll give you good, honest feedback if you request it. Right? And then you'll start to gain that confidence before you go out into the open public. But this is a great platform to come on camera, make sure your mic is on and share a question or a thought like you just asked, and that could be your first step as well. Apprehension will diminish with the more practice and the more times you challenge yourself, and we'll get to that as one of the 7 C's as well.
Okay. To recap then, or actually just to go over the last couple comments.
Yes.
We wrap it up. So practice, continue learning, accept support, believe in yourself. It's a conscious choice, 100%. And also, somebody said they used to let their brothers listen to their speeches. And again, that's a conscious choice to have somebody to be able to give you feedback, and you're also letting it be known through the power of your voice. So, some really good comments and some really good questions today. Overall, we ask again that you tell a friend to tell a friend. If this week we had 49 people, I believe, all together on the Zoom this morning, and if we tell one more person, we'll be up at technically 98 or 100. Let's round it off to 100 next week. So let's everybody bring somebody next week, share this knowledge, and we will make it happen. We're going to get to that place where we belong, and our destiny is greatness, and we are of royalty. So please, please, please don't forget to be the best that you can be every single day. All right. So
let me just, can I get a closing comment in, my brother, or what?
My brother.
So I just want to make sure everyone understands that the consistency with which you attend these sessions is what's going to make the real difference. It's a Saturday morning. Hopefully folks have time. This is a good time that we selected, I believe. And as Rod said, when you invite your friends, advise them of the benefits you're seeing in the program. That's going to be the best convincer. I guess word of mouth is really the best form of marketing because it comes in the form of a testimonial, if you will. So always do that. And again, spread the word. And we're here every single week. And we want you to make sure that you get all the benefit you need or want out of this. We're here for you.
All right. Thank you very much. Go safe. And as they always say, peace.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. All our public speakers are saying thank you. I like that. All right. Good to see you all.
Awesome.
Yeah, we're very proud of those of you who chose to attend this. It's a great sign for our community. We talk about anti-black racism. The only way to close the gap is to make sure we do our work on our side as a people as well.
Yes.
It's not going to all come from the other side. Trust me.
Yes.
Check out bbpa.org for more information, more programs, and a lot of great things coming to you.
Thank you.
Stay loud and stay black and proud.
Thank you. Bye.
DJ Rod B, what you got for me?
All right, we're going to play it up right now, my brother. We've got a little bit of that Canadian Sabbath.
Hi, Michael. How are you? I see you're well lit today.
Throughout my day. I don't know if I'm well lit, but I'm here doing some stuff. It's always an enjoyable program for me.
Yeah, exactly. I've been listening all morning as well. Excellent program.